Hello, my name's Jackie Poole. I'm Dementia Care Champion for Quality Compliance Systems, QCS, and I'm also the author of this book, From Dementia to Rementia, published by Jessica Kingsley Publishers. So I wanted to talk to you about the content of this book, particularly about what rementia means and some top tips from it for some personal rehabilitation strategies that might be helpful to you or to somebody who lives with dementia who you are supporting. So let's start by just looking at the word rementia and what we mean by that. And in order to do that, first of all, we need to understand what we mean by dementia, which is taken now, it's understood that dementia really is the group name for all of the symptoms that people experience when they've got the chronic conditions affecting the brain cells, such as Alzheimer's disease, vascular disease, and Lewy body disease being the main three. So if dementia is the group name for the symptoms, then rementia is actually the name for the reduction of those symptoms. It doesn't mean that the conditions that cause those symptoms is going to be cured, but it does mean that it's possible to reduce those symptoms so that the person can function better. So that's what we mean by rementia. Now in the book, apart from the description about what rementia is, there are then three main sections, each one taking a turn to look at some of the symptoms and also not only that, but also how we can help the brain to be at its optimum when it comes to good brain health. So the three sections are nutrition, emotion, and cognition. And in the section on nutrition, we look at two sides to this. First of all, I write about good nutrition and the impact on brain health and what can get in the way of that. So in particular, looking at foodstuffs that help with reducing any inflammatory responses in the brain, because we do know that the main condition of Alzheimer's disease, for example, has a strong connection with inflammatory responses. So reducing those through foods that can help with that is really important. So making those good lifestyle choices that help to impact on good body health will also be good for the head too. Of course, being well hydrated is a part of that too. And in addition, looking at good oral hygiene, because if somebody hasn't got good oral hygiene and they've got inflamed gums, gingivitis, we know that there is now a strong relationship between that infection and what can happen to the transfer of that onto into the brain and impact on the brain cells. But of course, also if somebody's got poor gum health and are in pain, then it's likely that they're not going to be able to chew or swallow so well either. So of course there's that impact too. So the section in the book covers all of that and gives us all the latest thinking about what contributes to good brain health in terms of nutrition. And in addition, I also look in that chapter that if somebody has already got a condition causing dementia and is living with certain symptoms, those symptoms themselves are going to compromise good nutrition and hydration. So for example, being able to recognize feelings of hunger or thirst, through to recognizing the actual food on the plate or the cup with the tea in it, for example, or maybe being able to do all that, but not being able to initiate the action. In other words, to be able to reach out and pick up that cup or that piece of food. And those are just some examples of some of the cognitive skills that we all use in order to eat and drink. And if any of those are damaged, then it's going to be harder for the person to do so. So by understanding all those, we can then begin that journey of helping the person make a rementia plan to address those particular cognitive symptoms that they are experiencing, to help them to get over those or to step in and help them get round them. The second section looks at emotion and how what we feel affects the brain. And we know that strong negative emotions get in the way, of course, of well-being, but also in the way of good, clear thinking. And if we've already got difficulties with thinking and reasoning and making judgments and all those other cognitive skills, then it's really important to help the person to be in a strong emotional state to not make that worse. And a lot of our emotional experiences come from the relationships and the interactions we have with others. So in this chapter, I look very closely at how we can provide more enabling communications and interactions with people who are living with dementia. But I also look at what gets in the way of good communication and give some tips for thinking about how we, for example, slow down and simplify the content of the language that we're using. Because as a person is experiencing their symptoms of dementia, it's possible that those are areas that have been damaged. So, for example, a person who is living with dementia with Lewy bodies, we know will have their ability to process and respond to, for example, what they're hearing will be affected. So we need to allow extra time for the person to not just hear, but process what they've heard, and also to articulate a response and be able to produce that for us. And if we're not careful, we can go too quickly in those conversations, and we've moved on to a second or further topic, and the person is still responding to the previous one, and then it sounds as though we're having a very confused conversation. And it might not be actually the person living with the dementia with Lewy bodies that's got the difficulty. It might be us that's moved on too quickly. So that's just one example of many tips that are in this book for helping you to have good communication. We also, in that section, not only look at interaction, but look at emotional well-being through helping people with their good sleep, with their reduction of body tension through relaxation type approaches as well. And then the final section looks at cognition and how it's possible to address cognitive symptoms. And again, I look at that in two ways. I'm the author of the Pool Activity Level PAL instrument, which is owned by Quality Compliance Systems. And that's about to come out in its 5th edition from Jessica Kingsley Publishers, so look out for that as well. And the PAL instrument helps you to understand the level of ability that a person has got, because of course people who are living with dementia, it's a progressive condition that causes those symptoms, and so a person starts off more able and becomes less able as the condition progresses. And the PAL instrument helps you to determine what level the person is at and how to present the world to the person at that particular level. In addition to that, in this book, the section also looks at addressing the cognitive difficulties that a person has got and using a rehabilitation approach, which really is about identifying what the goal is that the person would like to achieve and what's getting in the way of that, which cognitive impairments are causing the difficulty, and then helping the person to either get around those with some compensatory type approaches, or to help them actually directly address them and either learn or relearn new information or lost information, or a new activity, or the lost ability to do an activity through repetition and practice, and through really targeting those specific areas of difficulty. So a good example of that is somebody might have lost the learning of names of people, that could be grandchildren, or it could be people out at a social club. Either way, it causes social embarrassment and social difficulty, and is likely to cause the person to begin to withdraw and not to be so socially active because they're embarrassed by the difficulty that they've got. So using targeted methods of helping the person to use what we call errorless learning and expanding rehearsal, where we help the person to practice over time and gradually expand those timeframes where they're repeating and practicing the information. It's possible to, what we think is happening is that they are educating the undamaged brain cells to make new connections in place of those damaged ones, so that that learning or relearning can happen. And by doing that, and by working on goals that are really important to the person, so they're highly motivated to keep that practice, because, you know, it takes a little bit of work to do that, then you're going to help the person to improve in their everyday ability and function. And that's what we mean really by Rementia.